Okay, so we have our ugly monster. So what we're going to do in our next video is we're going to paint this guy. So let's go ahead and expand this area here. Click on color, and click this little power symbol there, and drag our color here. If we click fill object, you'll notice nothing happens. And the reason is we need to turn on, under polypaint, we have to make sure colorize is on. And we have to make sure that we're on our model here. So believe it or not, it is filled in white. We want to go ahead and pick another matte cap. So I usually go with just the white here. And then what I can do is I can go in and say, you know, my ugly monster is green. So I'm going to go select kind of this darker green. And what I want to do is create a brush that paints on them. Notice how I'm kind of sculpting right now, and it's just doing more sculpting on my monster. Well, what I want to do is I'm going to select my standard brush. And this is a different kind of brush. And notice how it'll paint in green. The reason why is what I did is I already set it up so that RGB was on. So if I take off Z add and I have RGB, and if I hold S and I kind of increase my draw size, you'll notice I'm actually painting on my model, which is pretty neat. You can see here I'm painting in all this area, and this guy's he's got green skin, you know, and he's actually a nice monster. But let's do this. We're painting him green here, painting in his ears, going like this. And again, I have symmetry on with X, so. And maybe he's got purple pants. I'm totally not ripping this off from any sort of superhero that already exists. So I'm going to hold S, decrease my draw size here. Just kind of get in here. Another trick that I kind of do is if you hold Control and you click, and I'm not releasing the mouse here, I can mask out an area. So I'm holding Control and Alt here, and I can kind of demask. And so something like this. Again, I just hit Control, and if I hold Control and I click off here, it inverses it. I can actually fill that object that's not masked. Alright, so we've got that going on. Let's give him some black shoes. I'm going to Control click out here and scroll out so that I am not selecting my masking. So let's do this. Alright, we've given him black shoes. Let's give him a little bit of a highlight here. Let's give his face some variation. Now it's pretty cool. We can actually click on Z add here and say I want to give him blue hair. I can click and scroll, and what you'll notice is, let me increase my intensity a little bit, and the way I can do that is by going here, or by holding spacebar. It gives me all of these options together. And if I click, notice how it's adjusting the geometry as I move him. Alright, I'm going to hit Control D and duplicate it one more time. Or, I'm sorry, give him more geometry. So I'm going to go with a little bit lighter of a shade. Decrease my brush size, so we can hold S here. And then in here, I'm going to paint with a lighter color his hair. It's looking pretty cool. Let's make his eyebrows blue as well. Alright, and zoom in a little bit more. And go with a darker color here. And maybe he has a beard. Alright. And let's go ahead and give him some white eyes here. And as I'm doing that, it's giving me a little bit of geometry. And I'm going to give him red dots, because he is a monster. There we go. We have our superhero monster villain guy. And again, if you want, you can kind of get a little bit crazy. You can draw in some blue veins that kind of go across his body. You know, we can go in here and select the same green color here. Like this. And we can kind of paint in. I'm going to hit X to turn that off. I'm just going to kind of paint in something that looks like a little rip in his pants. And then I'll grab my black, shrink my brush down, and just sort of detail around that area so it looks a little bit more like a rip. Alright, so let's take a look. We've got all this data, but it's actually not stored in a map for us to bring into Maya again. So let's take a look at how we do that. Well, if I go to UV map here on the side, I'm going to make sure that my map is pretty high here. And then under texture map, we're going to increase create, and I'm going to hit new texture, and texture on. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Actually, our character doesn't have any UVs. So I'm just going to create just a UV tiles for a second. Oh, I'm sorry, you can only do that under the lowest subdivision. So let's go to geometry here. Let's go all the way down to level 1. And let's go ahead and generate some UVs. So I'm going to just do UV tiles for now. We're going to unwrap this model ourselves. Let's go to geometry and go all the way up to the highest level. Let's go to back to polypaint. Let's undo that for a second. And let's make sure. Let's test that out now. Let's go to texture map. New texture. Texture on. Let's go down to 1. Go back to texture map. Turn texture on. Oh, I'm sorry, it's still bugging us about our UV. So okay, so what I did is I went to geometry. I went to my lowest setting here, and under UV map, we're going to do a packed UV tile. So just click that once. Then go put down the texture map, turn on new texture, new from polypaint, and there we go. So I'm going to actually go back up to 6, because what I want is I want all of that detail into my texture. So go back to texture map and do new from polypaint, and you'll see that it gave us all of that, the higher level detail, because we were at the higher geometry setting. Okay, and the next video we're going to take a look at unwrapping it further and how we go between this and Maya.